Good morning. It is morning huddle time. I'm Chad Prinky here alongside Stacy Holzinger, as always.
The nature of the beast is the competitive nature of the industry.
Is if you can see it, you can be it.
It's all about the people. The people are what make it great and worthwhile.
Yeah, anything that I think helps build the story behind the company is great.
These are the things that that you're like, we don't need that because we have plenty of work right now. Got it. But if you don't do it now, where are you going to have work in the future? The Morning Huddle Construction Show is fortunate to have 5 sponsors for Season 7, helping us to spread the word and create positive change in the construction industry. And we want to give a shout out to each of them and thank them now. First is Katz Abosch. This is a middle market accounting firm with a deep specialization in construction, tax, audit, accounting, fantastic group of people. Next is Lawrence Law. This is a boutique law firm that works with contractors and helps them with their day-to-day legal needs as well as all of their most significant legal challenges that they might run up against. Lawrence Law. Then we have Sandy Spring Bank, which is a regional bank in Maryland with a group of people who really understand what the needs of construction businesses are and who partner with you to achieve your financial aims. So Sandy Spring Bank. And then we have Marsh McLennan Agency, bonding and insurance professionals who really just have unparalleled insight into the construction industry. They're the best in the business. And then lastly, we have Genesis AEC. And Genesis is a full service architecture, engineering, and construction management firm with a deep specialization in the life sciences industry. We also happen to have some of their folks help us with guest hosting from time to time. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Let's get back to the show. Stacy, it is morning huddle time. What's happening where you are?
Good morning. Doing a lot of my entrepreneurship schooling through December. So we just went through like the leadership quiz, like Myers-Briggs, that kind of thing. It was a little bit different.
Sure.
So, but I was curious, do you know where you rate on the leadership style?
On Myers-Briggs, I don't. I know I'm an E something. I'm an extrovert something. On the disc style, I'm a DI.
Gotcha.
In terms of personality styles. What are you?
I can't remember the letters either, but this test that we just took, I'm an amiable, so more on the like empathetic, like quiet,
Totally
compassionate side. Yeah. So it was a different style test, but it was very interesting. We had a lot of expressions, is what they call it in our class. So
leadership style is such an interesting thing, how you can be successful, and you really can be successful with different leadership styles. You can drive the same level of success, you just get there very different ways, right? Like I'm definitely more of an inspirer, a motivator, inspirer. Like I get people all fired up, and
definitely.
I like to, right? Yeah, I like to get people having fun and
You got good energy.
Well, I have energy. I don't know. It's good or not. It is energy. It's not always appropriate for the situation, I'm afraid. I've learned. But it is. It does exist.
Yeah, and you've been doing your leadership trainings with ABC.
So really, facilitation. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, this is that time of year again, where everybody's, and not that there's any specific time of year this has to happen, but for some reason, well, not for some reason, obviously, with the new year coming up upon us, companies, organizations that like to get out ahead of it, have their planning sessions for the upcoming year in the fall. And yeah, last week I was working with ABC at Metro Washington, helping to facilitate theirs. Today I'm just giving a speech at a planning session, talking about the book, which is the book I think has sold the better part of 5,000 copies now, Stacy.
Oh, that's so awesome!
Bananas.
Great to hear. And
It's
you're going to be speaking about your book all over the place, right? You have a lot of
all
things
over the place. Yeah, we'll be announcing different opportunities, coming up where I'll be at different conferences and stuff like that. It's premature to announce anything that is in the works, but I'm pretty confident that we'll be at probably about 1 or 2 conferences a month in the new year. So
wow,
pretty neat.
that's busy. Yeah, awesome.
Cool. Yeah, it's really cool. it's a little, yeah, thank you. It continues to be surprising that the book doesn't suck.
No, really, it's not
Seriously, to some degree, like imagine it's a very, vulnerable feeling.
It
You put it out
is.
there and you're like, hope this doesn't suck.
Yeah.
It's a and every time I write something or every time like doing the podcast, I hope it doesn't suck. Like everything we do, I want to make sure it's not
Everyone,
bad.
I think everyone feels a little bit of that. You just got to go with it and do it.
If you don't, yeah, and you know what, I got to tell you, there are definitely critics. There are definitely people who say negative things, and I find, aside from the people who are just, whatever, clearly, grumpy or just being snarky, which is fine. That's cool. I wish them well.
Part of it.
But I love negative feedback, and that's something that I never used to like. I used to always like be scared of negative feedback, and now I really enjoy it. I find it very productive to have somebody say like, this wasn't as good as it could have been. And I'm like taking notes. Thank you. That's really useful. Even if I ultimately disagree with it, I still find the comment useful.
Yeah, as long as they're giving you good feedback, but just saying like it sucks. It's like that's not
Right.
really helpful.
How can I work with it sucks? What do I do with that?
I know.
Let's
There's
bring on
not much I
our
can
let's
do.
bring on our guests for today. So today, Stacey, we've got our good friends, longtime pals in Ben and Neil from Frisco Woodline. Frisco Woodline is a lumber supply and value added kind of reseller, which will have them get into some detail on exactly what they're doing to differentiate. But thank you, Ben and Neil, for joining the Morning Huddle today.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. Always love the conversations we have. So excited to share whatever we can, help the audience, and just talk about our new business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think in the context that you guys are coming on, aside from just our pals that we know really well and like to have conversations with, the context is, in my mind, businesses have to be innovating.
Mm-hmm.
You can find yourself feeling, and I talk about this in the book actually, and that there's one story in particular I can remember. I was having breakfast with a friend of mine who's the owner of a really successful contracting company. It was back in like 2014 or 13, something like that. And he was talking about how great things were in his business. I was like, man, that's so great. I'm so glad to hear it. And how successful he'd been. And I said, what's next? And he was like, nothing. I want to stay exactly the same. And I was like, dude, you're toast. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I'll spare the story. Read the book if you want the story. But if you don't change on your own, the world will change you. And you'll be forced to change. And one of the things that I think you guys have done that's exciting and worth talking about, worth making a conversation public about, is you've really innovated your business. So it's in this context of deciding to innovate your business. How did you actually pull it off? And what were some of the lessons learned and the problems and all that kind of stuff along the journey that you're really joining us today? So with that as the backdrop, maybe give a little bit of a background. So the company used to be called GE Frisco, which I have to remind myself.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that too.
Me too.
You rebranded to Frisco Woodline, but talk about the legacy business. Talk about essentially what GE Frisco has been in the business of and for how long and all that type of stuff.
Sure, absolutely. So GE Frisco was founded by George Edward Frisco in 1955. So we'll be celebrating our 70-year anniversary next year, which is really exciting. And I think in and of itself, something to be proud of. But historically, we've been very much a pure play lumber supplier to commercial construction. So everything we've done in the past, for the most part, our customers are commercial general contractors and commercial subcontractors. And that includes your heavy highway, your civil, your utility contractors. But in the past, it was, if it's wood used in construction, that is something that we would sell. But, the future is changing. So that's kind of where we were in the past. And we made a conscious effort a few years ago to change. Happy to chat about that now, or do you want, that's sort of the background of where now Frisco Woodline was or is. And Frisco Woodline, we made the change last year. 2022, 2023 were both big years for us. And those were the years that we really decided to proactively change the direction of the company and invest in a whole new operation, whole new side of our company.
There's a bunch of good stuff in there. One of the things that I definitely want to key on at some point in the conversation is the timing for making change. And one of the things that I see as a best practice for what I call well-built companies, which is just companies that meet a certain standard of excellence. One of the things that I see as a common thread is they capitalize on good years, not just to pay themselves more, but just to reinvest in the business and do smart things. And it sounds like that was a 22 and 23 decision that led to some pretty exciting stuff. I want to get into that. Talk about, well, you know what? I'll pause there for a moment. One of the cool things that I think I heard you say is that just in general, when I think about lumber supply, and I remember when I first met you, when I think about lumber supply, the first thing that triggers in my mind is like, oh, okay, got it. So you're selling wood to framers. And you were like, actually, not really. And yes, to some degree, but actually not really. And that by itself struck me as innovative, right? It was like, well, who else buys wood? And you started rattling off this list. I was like, wow, yeah, it's a totally different thing that's maybe not as focused on, bulk, hitting people with 1 million studs at one time, but on more custom, more unique, more service oriented kind of delivery model. Is that really the foundation of the business?
Yeah. So interestingly, as a company, we've always shied away from the wood framing business. Sure, is it big dollars? Yes. But is it low margin? Absolutely. And, one of the biggest challenges and the reason that we decided to stay away from it is people don't realize that one, lumber is a commodity, right? So, and we'll talk about this probably, I think, a little bit more as to some of the justification in our change, but it's a product where we don't control the pricing.
Right.
It trades like the way you hear oil trading or, gas and all that. It trades the same way. Obviously, it's just not as much in the forefront. I'm sure everyone heard about it. The audience definitely heard about it during COVID, right? But beyond that, I think a lot of people probably don't recognize that it's a commodity. So the reality is let's say that you do chase these big lumber packages. You are effectively locking in pricing in some cases for 12 to 18 months, which from the time that if we were to bid the job to the time that we would get awarded it, the pricing could move 5 to 10%. And it's a fairly low margin bid that you'd have to do to win it. So we tend to shy away from that. But as you and I talked about early on, wood is used in so many different trades. People don't think about it. For example, in concrete, wood is used a lot in concrete. And it's used for the forming. It's used for like ply form, for example, 2x4s, 2x6, 2x8s. All that is used so heavily, and that's just one example. As I mentioned,
Sure.
Utility contractors are using it. So yes, when you look at us historically, we probably we're not this lumber yard, even though we're very much pure play historically. We were not a lumber yard that was focused on big packages. Like lumber packages and framing packages. We were focused on a lot of the other areas that use wood, which it really is so many different trades out there.
Awesome. And so to an extent, I would just like to submit that thinking different has been in your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time. You were always kind of thinking like, well, what's our spot? What's our play? So enter Ben into the equation, right? So Neil, you're the president of the company, yeah?
Correct. Yes.
Ben, what's your role at Frisco Woodline? And then maybe I don't know who the right person to talk about this is, but introduce sort of what role you've played in the new business. What is the new business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Ben. I'm director of operations and special services. So I kind of oversee all the operations out of the new division, but also help the sales effort there. So did a little bit of work on the actual lumber yard division, but more so now on the special services. So I was brought on board because at a point in my career, I was sort of looking to bring my corporate knowledge to the table to a small company that can really help them go to the next level, right? And so I was looking for that growth opportunity, and luckily Neil and I met up, and over a beer we had a great conversation about the future and the vision as to what we were going to do, And, kudos to Neil. It took a chance on me, right? Taking this company and basically said, look, I've got 35 acres out here and I got no idea what we're going to do with it, right? We have to do something with it. We're either going to sell it, we're either going to turn it into a nursery, or we're going to do this new venture, right?
Right.
So I was kind of brought on board to help analyze all of that. So, it's kind of a three-step approach, really. The first part was the big analysis piece of it.
So that's really interesting. If I'm hearing it right, Neil, essentially you hired Ben without knowing exactly what it was that you were going to do together, but that you knew that he was somebody that you could use to innovate the business.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, some of the trends that we were seeing even before Ben came on board were trends that I knew were festering that we as a company had seen. So, a couple of those to just give a little bit more specificity here. Since 2018, commodity pricing in general, not just in lumber, but you really look at a lot of other assets, has been
construction materials, not just construction materials, but yeah,
it's been very volatile, right? So you, again, and we're subject to wherever the market is. So there was a lot more risk coming into the market volatility side of construction and construction in general, but specifically in our world in lumber. So that was a big problem. The other thing we were seeing is it was just getting so much more competitive. Certain things that we were leaders of and had great market share in, it was a lot of people started selling them. And big supply houses, some of the supply houses that really historically focused more on drywall or different products for concrete contractors, they started selling wood products. And the pricing got so competitive in many cases, it was hard for us to compete. And we knew that convenience sells, right? I mean, this was Amazon, and with Amazon Prime was starting to really take off, in the late teens. And now, I mean, today, I don't think there's a person out there that doesn't know what Amazon Prime is.
Right.
So convenience sells. And we knew we did not want to be we didn't want to start competing with these one-stop shop big supply houses, because I just felt it was an extremely challenging proposition. You'd have to invest a lot of money to bring all that inventory on board. And then all for what, sort of tiny margins, because those players tend to be very price aggressive. And that's just not what we wanted. So
they're doing a volume business. They're doing a business. It's
correct.
About, the more volume you can possibly do, the lower you can buy it at. The lower you can buy it at, the more you can create margin, just simply by buying better, not by selling for more, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we wanted to create a business that had long impact, long lasting. So that's when, about this whole conversation and where Ben comes into play is the fact that we wanted to look at a business and decommoditize ourselves. We wanted to offer services, things that we, A, had more pricing control over, B, would be unique to the marketplace, and C, it was just things that people weren't doing as much. And we were fortunate. We had this, 35 acre property, as Ben had mentioned just a little bit ago. So we had certain things and certain assets that I think we were looking at, and how do we really revitalize it? How do we look at investing in a whole new side of our business? And that's where I was like, okay, Ben, you have the analytical ability as well. Let's work on this together. Let's figure out what are some of the ways and where can we go? Where can we shift our business so that we give ourselves the staying power in the future?
Awesome. Okay. So ultimately, what direction do you take the business, and exactly what does that, entail? And then maybe naturally you can just get right into the story of how you put it together.
Yeah, sure. So we did a couple things. I mean, one, we looked at, okay, where were we seeing organic growth within the company? One of the areas that we were seeing organic growth was trim and molding. So we started chasing a lot more of the trim and molding packages for multifamily, for a little bit on the residential side, but primarily it was the commercial side, and it was multifamily. So we knew that there were things coming up there. We felt, especially in that world, we were being underserved by some of our vendors. So one of the challenges that we saw was if an architect or designer put in a unique profile or a custom profile, if it wasn't a huge run, we didn't have very many places to go, and it was getting more and more challenging for us to price those out. So we saw an opportunity there. The other area was we would always get a lot of unique requests, hey, can you stain this plywood? Can you prime this and this and that. And we could never do that. We always had to outsource it. And so we saw that, hey, if we're going to get into trim and molding, well, guess what? The next step is going to be priming it. And priming side of it became a huge opportunity for us. And that's especially, I'll let Ben talk to this. His background is actually in coatings. So we already had this great knowledge coming from Ben, as well as, the rest of the team we hired. And it became a unique proposition that we saw, because now no longer, like, the closest people that we were outsourcing to were hundreds of miles away. So there really wasn't anyone big in our market doing this. And that we saw as a great opportunity to add value, create this value add proposition to what we are selling. But not only that, it allowed us to diversify, and it allowed us to chase away from not just being in commercial construction, but open the doors to residential construction. Because that was a big thing that we saw is, hey, if we can diversify, that's better for our business as well. So I'll let Ben talk to this a bit more, but I mean, that was really where we spent a lot of our time and analysis, figuring out what it is we should buy, what kind of equipment we should invest in, all of it. I mean, I could turn it over to Ben.
It was a lot of fun because, like Neil just mentioned, I have coatings background, but that's in the architectural coatings, business. So on this side, the industrial wood coatings, there's a lot of crossover, but it does get pretty in depth, right? But I had zero knowledge on lumber and zero knowledge on molding machines. And Neil's like, here's what a molder does. So I literally had to figure out, like, okay, well, what is, molding, and how is it created, and how does this whole machine work? And it's very, very complicated. So, it's been a lot of time figuring that out. And then, once we kind of got to that stage, we're looking at different machines, and we decided to make sort of a leap of faith and buy gold standard, right? We want to be known as the highest quality prefinisher and molding company around. And so to do that, you have to have very, very good machines, right? And we had very good vendors, obviously sales reps trying to sell you stuff, but by asking a ton of different questions, we were able to feel comfortable with the machines that we were going to look at and purchase. Did a lot of the travel down to looking at those machines and seeing how they work. And then from there, we kind of like, all right, this is what we're going to go with. Actually, like on our pre-finisher, we went down there with an idea of what we wanted, a vacuum coater, and then we left with a completely different machine, because when we went down there, we were like, wow, that's going to open up the doors for a whole nother thing, right? So so that was a good portion of it. And then you obviously have to make the money work, right? You got to figure out, like, how much does this all cost? Well, what's the break-even point? And so we had this huge model that was very complex, and it started getting more and more because there's just so many different components that impacted it. So, luckily Neil's background is in finance, and I'm pretty analytical. So we were able to kind of figure out, like, okay, this is a good business decision. Let's move forward with it. Right. So, and so once that was a green light, and that's what we decided we were going to do, put some timelines around it. Okay, how long is it going to take to get all this in? We had to completely renovate our existing facility. So, cleaning the whole thing. And we're old. We're an old company. It was an old sawmill, and there's a lot of old gear that we have. And so we had to basically take a building that, instead of investing in a new one, which we did look at, we basically look at that property to figure out, okay, do we buy a new building? Do we renovate a new building? And we had, I think it was 17 different iterations on CAD that we were trying to fit all the machines in and all the measurements, and it was constant visits to figure out, okay, what is the best sort of mechanism here that's going to be the most ergonomic and be able to kind of work for the actual workers, right? And the operators, they're going to be using this equipment. And so we landed on the one, which actually was kind of funny, because we got all the way to 17 and we're like, let's just look at number one again. And number one is kind of where we landed. So we had it in the beginning, but, we just wanted to make sure that we had it right. So that's kind of where it ended up. And we spent a lot of time renovating the building, new roof, new insulation in there, new ceiling, do a lot of like the structural foundation on the walls, insulation, painting it, building an office. And a lot of that we did all in-house. We had a great
employee. He's retired now, Jerry, and he worked with us for about 27 years, and guy knew everything, right? The term jerry rigging is literally where it kind of came from, right?
It came from him.
Yeah, came from him, right? So little rough around the edges, but super knowledgeable, right? And helped me kind of, figure out what we need to do and how we get machines in there. And then as we were doing that, we're adding to our team, right? And which is a whole nother conversation. But we brought all these people on board, and we did a lot of this in-house, only outsourcing what we needed to outsource. So it's a fun, and we actually have like a lot of videos on it. We called it Project Sherman, and it was a lot of big involvement from all the employees to get it to where it needed to be. Yeah,
that's awesome. So I mean, it's obvious that there were a lot of moving parts to actually getting to enacting this change, but it sounds like what you have to do is kind of strike this balance of keeping an open mind so that you're willing to change the plan as you learn information that, like, for example,
100%.
when you shared, we went for one type of machine and we ended up buying a different type of machine, and that type of stuff. But then also having and working a project plan. Otherwise, this is the type of thing I've watched coming into some companies. I'll be like, what's out there? And they'll be like, yeah, we started that. We start, that type of thing. And I think you have to be able and willing to see it all the way through, which clearly you guys have. So far, success story. Has this turned into a value add to the business? It's relatively new, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What are the early returns?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a work in progress, for sure. I mean, I think that, of course, we want the honest answer is we want everything to go faster, and earlier on we want break even yesterday, right? But it's been overall, it's been a success. It's opened doors for us to new customers, new customer types. So now, are we not just selling to commercial contractors? We're selling to residential builders. We're selling to manufacturers in certain cases. We're selling to other dealers. So, people are coming to us for what we're doing now, which is awesome and incredible to hear. Not only that, kudos to the team. And I'm not just saying this. I think we have the best finish, especially for the pre-finished stuff we're doing. We have the best finish in the industry. People come to us, and these are manufacturers that produce like PVC boards or PVC trim, or all sorts of things. Like, we're working with a lot of companies out there, and when they see our finish, they're like, "Oh wow, this is incredible." And so we welcome demos anytime. People can come in, check out what we're doing. We're happy to show. We're happy to talk about it. And I think on that front, it's been a big thing. And a success to the marketplace. What I would say has been the biggest challenge, though, is that, interestingly, the DC area, the Mid-Atlantic, has been a little slow to adopt pre-finished. And that's, what we've seen is like, and I guess we wouldn't have thought this right out of the gate, but this is actually our opportunity too, which is the cool part of it, in that pre-finish has been bigger, further northeast, more in the Carolinas. There's been this little void in this Mid-Atlantic region around pre-finishing, which I think is actually bodes well for us. So on the one hand, our sales efforts have become more educational, but on the other hand, we're getting that, early mover advantage on it, right? And so that's been the fun part. It's been fun to educate people. We're doing, like I said, we're doing demos all the time. I'm sure the team is tired of talking about and showing what we do. And obviously a demo isn't the easiest thing for us to do, because we kind of stop production.
Right. Stop what you're doing and show people how you're doing it. Everybody planned to work an extra 20 minutes today.
Exactly.
It's effort and it's setup. It's we're doing for free what we would normally charge for, but it's awesome to get the reactions. And for us, it's great to just get that feedback from the manufacturers, from other builders when they come and see what we're doing.
So I want to jump on that for a moment and just expand. I've had, there are all kinds of, business is fun, isn't it? Business is neat. I've been fortunate to have exposure to hundreds of contractors and construction companies over my 15 or 16 or however long years I've been doing this. And what I've noticed, in some situations, I've had some exposure to what I call market. I don't know if it's even called this, but what I call market creation. there are situations where you are filling a clear market demand, and those are always really neat. And I'm sure you have some of that going on in your business where, you're jumping right in and are a new option for an established thing that people already buy. And they, maybe your finish is better, or maybe your service is better, or maybe your location's easier, or maybe your prices are lower, or whatever, that kind of attract attention, that say, oh, hey, there's a new such and such in this market. Like, this happens with geographic expansion all the time. And it's one of the easiest ways for companies to successfully grow is to move into a geography where there's really nobody that does what you do in that geography at the level you do it. So all of a sudden you show up and everybody's like, oh my gosh, another option. That's not what you've done in the geographic expansion piece. What you're doing to an extent, Neil, what you're describing is with all these demos and stuff, right? Is to an extent, you're trying to get people to do a thing that they're not used to doing, buying the pre-finished material, right? And when you're in the market creation mode, it is a ton of education. You don't have to do a lot of education when people already know what it is you sell. They buy it all the time. It's easy. When you're creating a market, you've got to educate that market on why the hell they need it in the first place, right? And so the demos is as complex, as annoying as they might be, not annoying, but as disruptive as they may be to operations on a day-to-day basis. It's a necessary step to get the market bought in to the idea and learning about, like, well, wait a minute, this is really good. You think about, frankly, prefab in general in our area, all forms of prefab, we're still in early ages of adoption of all kinds of prefabricated, materials and, the whole assembly line, style production, which in different markets across the country, if you're in Pittsburgh and you're watching this, or if you're in San Francisco and you're watching this, you're like, we've been doing that for a while. Well, out here, we still don't, damn it. And you're doing the legwork of creating a new way of buying, right? To a certain extent. So, we've talked about the undertaking. We've talked about how much effort it is. We've talked about, the turnaround. But it's also been, a relatively positive discussion. It's not all sunshine and lollipops. What are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have had through this process?
Sure. And we had hinted at, like, I think everything is moving in the absolute right direction. Was it an overnight success? No, because as you pointed out, you sometimes hear, oh, build it and they will come. I'm like, well, where is everybody?
Where are they?
Because you got to educate, right? And so you have to educate people to get them to come there and understand, like, oh, actually, this is an interesting, new way that we can do it. So, that has been a challenge, of course, just getting to the marketplace. Hey, here's a new way of doing something, and here's why you should do it. So getting that message out takes some time. The other thing that has been a little bit of a challenge is, where do we really fall in the supply chain? Right. So a lot of times pre-finishers kind of are closer to distribution. And other times, it's not so much, I guess, where we play. Historically, we're very much like a dealer. And so getting that right and navigating that piece of it, between working with manufacturers, working with distributors, working with other dealers, and then the builders, has been something that has been a work in progress. And I think we are now, in the last couple months, we've gotten to a point where we've perfected that little model. But it's taken some time, because the manufacturers loved us, but they're like, oh, wait, how should we get this product out there in your market? And so we've had to, like, work through that. And that's where some of the things, because it's so new, especially in this marketplace, has had some challenges. But that, I think, from a sales standpoint, has been one of the bigger challenges. And then team wise, I think if you have to talk about it internally, you have to share that vision. It's kind of the basic best practices of business. You really have to communicate it to your team over and over and over again, because getting them on board with it, understanding, hey, this is why this change is important, is tough. It's a really hard conversation. As we all know, change is difficult, right? But rightfully so, Chad, you pointed out, you have to change. You have to change, or everything will change around you, and you're going to just get swept up. and not
And I
reflective.
think that's like a testament to our team too, right? Like our team that we hired, and our legacy team as well. Right? You got to be able to change, but I think the biggest thing is being flexible and adaptable. And then, and assumptions that we made in the beginning. You talk about big challenges, like assumptions that we made on like what we thought would work. I mean, you look back now, it's completely different the way we're going to market, and we've had to learn all of that. And it's that's the hardest part of going on this new venture, is the experience factor. And the guys that we have over here have never run a molder before. They've never known how to do a trim molding. Neil and myself have never done that, right? We had an idea, we know we buy and sell it before, but now creating it, having to learn all that stuff from scratch, that takes a certain type of employee to be willing to stick it out, right? Because some people, they want to go show up 9 to 5, just work a job and then leave, right? I know what I've got. I know what I'm expecting. Literally every single day and every single job that we do is something new that we've never done before.
Yep.
But our team is like fantastic, right? Because once we get it and once we know it, boom, you log it in, right? And we've created this culture of learning. So every job that we do and finish, what went well, what didn't go well, let's talk about that. And what are the lessons that we can do to get better, right? How can we continuously get this thing going into a better and a larger thing, right? And very process oriented.
You just mentioned something, Ben, that I think is, and I it's so funny. It's we're not going to have an argument, I promise. But there's something that you just said that I really want to call out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice, guys, Ben was like, it's really got to give credit to our people. We've got a special type of person. It takes a special type of person to be adaptable, to be that type of person, like all that type of stuff. You heard Ben heaping a whole bunch of praise on the people. I'm sure all that's true, but I'm telling you, it's the culture. The culture is a culture where you heap praise on your people. And those are like those things. My point is this: people are adaptable if they feel appreciated.
Right.
People are adaptable if you recognize that change is hard and you don't just say like, "Damn it, I said do it this way." Right?
Mm-hmm.
People are adaptable if you are understanding and making it into a learning environment and turning it into something that's fun and a project together. It's not the people that are adaptable. Yes, certainly. I'm sure you have great people, but it's the environment that you're putting people into to succeed. That's my experience in watching this over and over again, is that it's, there are always exceptions. There's like, that one ain't changing, like there's nothing that we can do about that one.
And I think it's also like sharing the vision too, right? Like, so for me personally, I work with Neil very closely every single day, and he's sharing his vision as to where he wants to go and what I need to do and be a part of that. And I'm taking that and sharing that even further down the lines. Right. And so I think it's just sort of creating that culture, and it's hard. Like, it is very, very hard. I mean, we have completely changed as a company, and we're facing that culture shift right now, right? Like, this is where we're going and this is what we want to do. Let's all get together and row it together, right? We got to point our sails in the right direction. So, and Neil, you probably touch a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I could add to that too. I think it's important in this situation. It's also about, you hear it in leadership all the time, being vulnerable, right? And you have to show, I have to show, hey, I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
I know you might come to me thinking I do, but I don't always know every answer. So Ben mentioned the stuff. There's times where we're doing something like, oh shoot, that's like totally wrong, or hey, that's not the best way. We need to shift it. And so you have to get people on board. Like, guys, I know we did this way yesterday, but we're going to shift that today. So, if you don't get their buy-in and you don't help them to understand, like, look, I screwed up or we didn't do it right. We're learning too as we go. And that's super important for everyone to understand. And that's why we're creating this learning culture. I mean, we call it the debrief culture here, kind of going back to what they do in the military, right? They debrief on every mission. That's sort of the idea, because we want to keep it perfected. I mean, the way that we do different projects is we do start from a base recipe in every single case. And then depending on what things are different, whether that's the moisture or the humidity or the temperature, we have to change how we change things and how we do things. But there's a funny story when when early on when we got the molder, we had contacted the manufacturer for some technical support, and it was our team calling. They're like, "Who's the operator here?" As if our team was like, and we're like, "That's us." And they're like, "Oh, okay, interesting."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, kudos to the team. We figured it out. When the four of us, there were a group of four of us that went down for the initial training. And everyone was like, "How are you guys going to get this? Do you have no one on your team that did this?" And we're like, "I'm confident we can do it." And
like we're sitting there next to a guy who's got like 50 years in the industry, and he's looking at the board and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's 23 thou off." And I'm like, "Yeah, can't tell that." Right. So, but we bought a lot of stuff to help us kind of overcome that challenge. Right. Is we bought like, this is called an OCMS. It's like a $30,000 machine that helps you be within 0.02 of an inch accurate. And without that, I mean, arguably we would need a veteran of 40 plus years to be able to get the accuracy that we're getting. So there are tools out there that can help you, overcome those challenges. But I think, there's a couple of sayings that kind of, hit home really when you're trying to do something like this is assumptions kill, right? You want everything to go here. And that's what we're assuming. We're looking at all the data, right? And data, to a certain extent doesn't lie, but you're also having an assumption base there. But in reality, you got to be okay with this happening, right? So this is where we want to go. But if it doesn't hit, you got to be okay with that, right? And so you got to have some oomph behind you and be willing to take on quite a bit of risk, right? And but it's about, I think that's the thing that helps you bring those A players on board that like, hey, I want to be a part of this, right? And you're pulling that culture in play every single day, and you're sharing the vision of where you want. And they're like, hey, these guys are in it and they want to be, there. I want to be there with them, right? So I think that's sort of the method that we have every day that we're going to bat with.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna, Stacy, do you have any questions to channel to these guys before we start parting ways? You're on mute. Hold on.
Oh,
there you are. Gotcha.
Here I am. No more questions, but I do like the term that you said, Ben. Legacy team. Like I like that. For your company culture. And I'm assuming that refers to the OGs on your team that are contributing to this. Yeah.
And it's super hard, right? Like they're the foundation that has allowed us this opportunity to go where we want to go, right? And the new chapter of the business, right? And so you cannot leave them behind, right? But we have to change and adapt, and it goes both ways, right? You bring on a team that is part of this new vision, they want to go forward, but then you also have your foundational legacy team that is like, I don't know, this is the way we've been doing it the whole time. And so you've got these two competing cultures going together, and I think for Neil and myself, we face that every single day, and we just have to reiterate it every single day, and just give recognition where it's due, right? You're asking a lot of people to change, and you're asking a lot of people to slow down too, right? So you got to find balance there, which is difficult for sure. But we have a great team, and I think it's about everybody realizing that what they do every single day is a cog in this bigger machine, right? And if you don't do your part of it, the whole thing falls apart, right? And it's getting people motivated to do that.
Yeah. So much of this is selling it internally, and it's so much of successful change management is selling it internally, making sure that you're fearless about having the right people in the right spots to move the thing forward internally, and then ultimately require a certain level of adaptability. Have you had to let anybody go through the process? Is there anybody that you've had to say like, this is somebody who's dragging their feet, man, and we got to change, and they're not coming with?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the challenges, right? At some point there is a crossroads where it just really will be hard for someone to really make that leap and understand, and then that's the reality of it. And so, I mean, you do, and you have to ask yourself that of everyone on the team, and what we're doing does put different pressures. Like, so if we did something one way before, it's going to have to be done a new way.
Yeah,
it's on us as leaders to also recognize, hey, I can't expect you to do everything you used to do plus all the new stuff. So in certain cases, we have to reshuffle, job responsibilities or titles or things like that to ensure that we're optimized and continuing to be efficient, because ultimately we have to be efficient. Right. And that's kind of like, a big part of what we're really working on now that we're about a year and a half into this, is taking a look at everything. How do we make sure we are optimized to chase and really capitalize on this amazing new opportunity that we have and that we've built, and we've worked hard to put a lot of eggs into that basket, but I'm confident that it's absolutely the right basket. And we will shift our team and, make sure that, and when I say shift, that doesn't mean letting go automatically. That means optimizing their role, taking away some of their responsibilities, reshuffling that so that we can succeed in the future. And that's one of the things. I mean, everything selling our pre-finished is harder. That's the honest answer, meaning from a pure administrative, getting the order out, etc., and then, following up with it, then reselling a piece of 2x4, right? That goes without saying, I think. And that's one of the big things that we're doing right now as we speak, in terms of, helping the team to be optimized.
Yeah. And we've implemented a whole new ERP system so that we can split the P&Ls out on this thing. And so there's a lot that we've thrown at the team for sure. Right. And new tech, and we like to be on the forefront of that. We're always looking for new tech to try and help us get to that next level. Like we just implemented iPads out in the yard and those kind of things. So, we're always continuously being innovative. And I think on the sales front, it's a very difficult sell, right? So like on our molding, we're trying to get in with companies that have been out there for a long time.
Yeah, it's totally new market for you guys. It's not like you're going to call the concrete guy and be like, hey, how about some molding?
Yeah, exactly. So you're fighting, your customer. You're basically trying to take them from their incumbent, and they're either mad at them, and you're like, okay, great, that's huge, right? All right, they're gonna walk right in the door. But most of the times, 95% of the time, they're perfectly happy with their incumbent, right? And so we've got to get in there and figure out.
You got to educate them on how you're different and better, and there's that whole market creation deal that we talk about. So No, I'm with you, man. And hey, guys, this has been a great conversation. We could do it all day. I'm confident of that, but we do need to bring it to a close. I want to thank Neil Agarwal and Ben Britten from Frisco Woodline for joining us again. Great conversation about business innovation. Business is fun. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
It is.
It's a lot of fun. Any parting words from you guys before we let you go?
No, well, thanks so much for having us. We really enjoy the conversation. I think we go all day, as you mentioned. We're happy if anyone wants to reach out to us, please feel free. You can email myself.
Yeah. How would somebody contact you if they wanted the demo, if they wanted to check out the videos that you guys posted, any of that?
Yeah. So they can email either of us, reach out to us on LinkedIn. I mean, we're both on there. Connect with us there, message us directly, or email us. I'm Neil at friscowoodline.com, and Ben is Ben at friscowoodline.com. So feel free to reach out. We always welcome the opportunity. In our minds, every connection is a great connection, and so we're more than willing to talk to anyone and everyone.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that, really appreciate you guys having us on here. I mean, I think the one thing I would say is be very open and honest, and don't let the status quo be your norm. Always challenge that, right? And always look at it from different angles, because you might, what I personally learned in this whole venture here is that the way that we've done things in the past could be right, but there might be a better way of doing it, right? And so if you got to look at those angles all over the front, and just because we've done things in the past that for the long periods of time, by implementing something new and looking at it in a different lens, can really create that shift of growth that you're looking for.
Great advice.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you soon.
Beautiful. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Great conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I've got so many good takeaways, and I wanted to run a whole training session on it now, and all that type of stuff. That's just, but no, great conversation. And thank you as always, Stacy, for sourcing the coolest guests. It's great to have these discussions.
Very easy, guys.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. You know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
You just set it up. Stacy, what do we have going on next week?
Yeah. So next week we're doing preventing wage theft, a
Yeah.
capitalist alternative.
Yes.
Yes.
A capitalist alternative. I love it.
I think
With
this is one of your contacts, right?
this is one of my so this one's my fault. If it but I'm sure no, you're gonna it's a blast. This is gonna be with my buddy Matt DeSarno. He has an unbelievable experience and take like he was a career FBI guy and has such an incredible set of experiences and stories from that and has since created a technology platform specifically for the construction industry to essentially help to make sure that we're following the law on who we put on our projects. I promise it will not be a boring discussion. Matt's a blast, and I'll be similar to this week where I'm running this from I promise this is not a fake backdrop. It's a bridal suite. Thank you very much, in a farmhouse. And it's not a fake background as much as it looks like it. I almost want to get up and walk around and prove it if it wouldn't just waste people's time. I would do that. But and next week I'll be running it from a hotel in Fort Worth. So, but this mic I hope will make it in my suitcase and prevent bad audio.
Right. And next week you'll be hopefully live with our guest, right? And
let's see. We'll see if the hotel will give me a space. We talked about him coming to my room, and I think we both agreed that would send
a little
bad
awkward.
messages.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah. So Matt and I are here first thing in the morning. We're just kind of sitting next to this bed.
Yeah.
We figured that was a no. So, Stacy, look forward to seeing you next week. And just one quick moment to remind the audience that while Stacy and I both we adore doing the Morning Huddle construction show, it is neither of our full-time job. You can learn more about Stacy's business, which is Steel Toe Communications, steeltoecommunications.com. Stacy leads that group. It is a marketing and website company, social media website, branding, all the good stuff, specifically for construction companies. And what I do is lead a team of consultants at Well Built Construction Consulting. And we help to build strategic business plans for construction companies and help those business plans turn into fruition, whether it's succession or exit planning or, just growth. That's the type of stuff that we do. So check us both out. You can, wellbuiltconsulting.com.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Have a good one. See you next week.
You too, Stace.
Wear your cowboy hat.
Oh, man. I need to get a cowboy hat.
Yes, you do.
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Yeah.
See ya.